really matters.
Hello and welcome back to hmTv. My name is Bernie Furshpan. I'm your host of Ordinary Heroes. And today I have an extraordinary hero who lives amongst us. He's an activist. He's a brilliant guy. He's all over, whenever I look at his social media account, I see him in different cities all the time, from Hawaii to Alaska. But he's always on the go. He's full of energy, and he's 85 years old and a Holocaust survivor. I'd like to welcome you to my show, to my podcast series. Sami Steigman, welcome.
Thank you, Bernie. I'm very honored to be here, to be part of hmTv. At the same time, we met several years ago in Atlanta. You can tell the story if you want to.
Well, I mean, the thing is that we keep bumping into each other and crossing paths time and time again. And here we are again together.
In one of the things, I saw a documentary by Christian Tarbisu. And I have seen many documentaries. I've spoken to many survivors and everything else. That is the best documentary without any other comparison, the best one that I've ever seen. You're a fantastic speaker, okay, and you really know how to reach the young people, and they are our hope and our future.
Coming from you, that is a huge compliment. I am flattered and humbled by your statement.
I mean it. I say what I mean.
A lot of people tell me it's a great film, but you said it's the best documentary you've ever seen. Now, you've seen hundreds, I'm sure. You've lived your own documentary in a way, and you made it out by sheer luck, like my parents, right? Those that survived, the 10% of the Jewish children in Europe that survived have a lucky story.
I am not only a Holocaust survivor, but I'm also a child of Holocaust survivors, motivational speaker. I'm an educator, which is totally different from being a teacher. And at the same time, I served in the Israeli Air Force. And recently, there will come out a movie called Eleanor the Great, the directorial debut of Scarlett Johansson. And I am in it, okay? And I am SAG eligible. So it's amazing. So now I can officially call myself an actor too. Just like you went through many, many lives.
I mean, we have a lot of lives, don't we? That we live,
right.
But you led a lot of different lives throughout your lifetime in 85 years, and somehow you managed to end up in Israel. You served in the military. You came to the United States. You went back to Israel. You came back to the United States, and during all those, times, you probably had different careers as well. So you had different lives.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about your past before we talk about what you're doing today as what I consider a hero.
Holocaust survivors, especially with young children, they did not want to talk about it. They wanted the children to have a normal childhood. So I knew that I'm a Holocaust survivor because my father, like other survivors, felt guilty. How come he was not able to save one of his family members? From 42 people, only 2 survived. I don't know if your audience knows it or not, but there were only 3 countries that officially accepted Jewish refugees: Dominican Republic, China, and Philippines.
Who would guess China and the Philippines? Very few people would ever come up with a thought like that.
And interestingly enough, to go to China, you did not need a visa, but it was extremely expensive. My Uncle Max, he was not a survivor. He was never in a camp. Mm-hmm. However, okay, he was a very poor man. And people had to be like all the Jews are in general, very creative. Okay, somehow he was on the last ship, very, very luxurious ship. How he got the money, I have absolutely no idea. I have been able, when I came to the States in 1968, I have been able to see him for a week. And besides him and my parents, I had no extended family.
Wow. So what was life like here in the United States? Your first trip here to the United States, what was it like?
Well,
what was the reason you came here? Why did you leave Israel?
Well, you never heard of a Jewish mother, have you?
Never in my life.
So what happened is, I was 28 years old. I finished my military. While I was in the military, I wanted to travel, but in 1962, my aunt had breast cancer. And in those days, that was a death sentence. So it was not the right time for me to come. I finished my military, started my career, had my friends, and I forgot about traveling. My mother, Jewish mother, she said, Sammy, you're 28 years old. You're not married. Why don't you travel? Mm-hmm. And at that particular time, okay, I lost my interest. And she enlisted my father's help. And at every occasion, they kept bugging me. And finally, I got tired, and I like to compromise. But the compromise has to be a win-win. And I knew at that time that in my passport, it said that I was born in the former Soviet Union. Being the most communist country in the world, I knew that it will take 5 years, okay, to come to get the visa to come to the States. So I said, you know, it's a wonderful idea. Who knows what happens in 5 years? And my parents will get off my back. Mm-hmm. Within a very short period of time, I would say maybe 2, at the most 3 months, they changed the immigration law, and it was based on profession. Why they needed accountants is beyond me. But I got
that was on top
visa.
Of the list, huh?
So without language and without money, America, Sami is coming.
Ah, okay. And they were accepting you with open arms. They couldn't wait to see Sami.
Absolutely.
And where did you go? What city?
Well,
was it New York?
You never heard of something called promises made, never kept?
Okay, I have.
Okay, so my second cousin, who was a very wealthy man, he promised my father that he will introduce me to the American culture, help me with a job, with a place to stay. So obviously he didn't do it. That was not kept.
So you were on your own.
So I was on my own. So it was a difficult time. I did not want to go back to Israel feeling that I failed. Mm-hmm. So I stayed here for 5 years.
So
and when I felt that I can make it here, I have decided, to go back. My luck was I met my ex. Uh-huh. Okay, so we got married. We had a son. I got divorced. Went back to Israel in 1983.
But where did you live in the States with your ex?
In Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
In Milwaukee.
Right.
Okay.
And in 83, I went back to Israel, never expecting to come back. Again, my mother, she noticed that I'm more American than Israeli. So she said, if you ever want to go back, you have my blessing. And I said, Mother, don't joke, because one day I'll come to you and I'm going to tell you that I'm leaving. She said, fine. And 5 years later, that's what happened. So in 1988, I stopped in New York. It was not my final destination, at least not where I wanted to live. But I came at the inflation. I was not prepared because it was the inflation, and I was not prepared for it. I did not want to go back to Milwaukee, where my son was. I haven't been in touch with him for a very long time, so I did not want to disturb his life. And one thing led to the other. And New York is right now my final home.
And you've been here since 88.
Yes. But again...
That's almost 30 years, right?
Yes. So again,
Did you work
Lived in Brooklyn.
Right. Did you work as an accountant?
Yes.
Okay.
But I did not like it because I'm more of a people person.
Right.
And I teach the young people to choose a profession that they are passionate about, because they will never work a single day in their lives. Pleasure will be work, work will be pleasure.
I say the same.
And interestingly enough, I decided to change careers, and I became a pharmaceutical rep. And I worked for a company that was, I don't know if your audience, they probably know E.G. Farben. They were the one with the Zyklon B.
Oh.
After the war, the E.G. Farben was separated into 4 different companies. One of them was Bayer. Okay, the other one was Hoechst. Hoechst had the pharmaceutical and the chemical company. I worked for the pharmaceutical company. But it was.
Did you feel funny working for them?
Yes, and interestingly enough, since Hoechst was part of the former E.G. Farben, and I had a lot of Jewish doctors, and they kept asking me, how can you work for a Nazi company? Well, number one, it was an American company. There was not a Nazi company.
But it has a history, right?
Pardon me? Part of the history. Yeah. But they kept bugging me. So finally, I had to come up with an answer. So I said, how come you're using a Nazi product to save lives? So they stopped bugging me.
Now, today, all this time, since '88, you were an accountant, but you've gotten very much involved in activism.
Yes.
Since the early 2000s. I believe it was 2004 you started getting...
2008.
And you got very involved with activism.
Not right away.
Not right away, but slowly but surely. You started speaking up. Yes. You started speaking up against anti-Semitism on many platforms and speaking engagements throughout the country.
And the world.
And the world. What did you get out of it? Do you feel satisfied after all these years of speaking up? Do you feel that you had an impact?
I have an impact, and I think the thing that makes me very happy is when I getting the feedback in the letters from the students. Knowing that, and I feel very comfortable with it when my time is coming. I know that in a very small way, I made a difference in this world, and that gives me the knowledge, the fact that my life was not wasted, because all of us have a role to play, and it's up to each individual whether they will accomplish their role or not.
Very good. I feel the same way. I feel that I'm having an impact.
You are.
But it's not enough, right? We need more of us out there talking to young people. There's kind of like 2 fronts. We have a front that's combating anti-Semitism, and we have legacy organizations that are doing that. And we have legislation, and it's full force.
Right.
We also, at the same time, have to educate the young people. Just like propaganda impacted the Nazi youth, we have to counteract this propaganda and brainwashing of hatred towards a group of people. And so we have to start at a very young age. We have to really talk to young people from a very young age about being tolerant to others, about understanding that we're all related, about accepting others, about being empathetic and understanding their situation. Because really, you are me and I am you. Under different circumstances. If you grew up in my household, you'd be like me. If I grew up in your household, I'd be like you. So if we understand this concept, that it's not genetic, it's a lot environmental of where we grew up and what culture we, were impacted by, people would be a little bit more understanding, and they don't have to agree with everybody.
Exactly.
But to respect the fact that their circumstance is different, right? Don't you agree?
Now, the interesting part is you brought something very interesting. We have a tendency to underestimate the intelligence of young people. And believe it or not, I spoke to 2nd graders. And I called the teacher and I said, I'm very sorry, but I don't know how to speak to 8-year-olds. It's a very difficult subject. So I'm going to leave it for them to ask questions, expecting very simple questions. To my surprise, the teacher said, no. You will give them the full presentation. They stayed with me for over an hour and a half. They asked better questions than the teenagers. And the ones that really surprised me, they sent me thank you letters. But not writing thank you for coming, or this is the first time that I met the Holocaust survivors. They put in paragraphs what they have learned.
That's beautiful.
And one particular student put 4 paragraphs, and then she wrote, finally, I don't care what anybody says. You're the best. Okay? You're somebody I can trust. You're my hero. You rock. And I realized, okay, that, and this is something that I tell other people, do not underestimate, okay, the intelligence of young people. Don't talk to them as children. When I go, for instance, for my presentations, even with, I start primarily with 4th graders. They're not too young to learn about it. But I always wear a tie and a jacket. Whether they understand it or not, it's irrelevant. But they will remember that I did show them respect.
Right. Very good. You know, there's still some Holocaust survivors around. I think there's about 400 to 500 survivors here on Long Island. Not all of them are active. Maybe they don't want to be active. Maybe they had enough of talking about it. But there's a small percentage of survivors that are courageous and brave, and they're willing to get out there and talk about the darkest chapter in human history and how we can never allow this to happen again. But knowing human nature, history tends to repeat itself. We
Correct.
say we don't want it to, but it's a saying because it's a fact. History always repeats itself. Since the Holocaust, some 50 million people have been killed in genocides. And even today, in the Sudan, there's extermination going on with a group of Christians by extremists. It's going on in parts of China, in parts of Europe. It's happening everywhere still. History tends to repeat itself.
Yes. The interesting part is what's happening right now in the Middle East.
Right.
They call it genocide. And my saying is, and I'm not the only one, no Jews, no news. Okay, so right now, what happened is in the Middle East, let's take, Hamas's numbers, that the Israelis have killed 40,000 people. They're forgetting that at least half of them were combatants.
Yes.
Okay. But let's take the 40,000. Nobody talks, like you mentioned Sudan. Nobody mentions in Congo, where they murdered 500,000 people.
Where are the protests? Where
Nobody
are the
talks
marches?
about it. So I'm going to repeat again.
Yeah.
No Jews, no news.
I mean, it's a fact. I just read in the paper, online, the digital paper, that 1,500 Syrians were slaughtered, including children, in Syria by this existing government while there was this transformation. As in, nobody talks about these things.
Nobody talks about it.
I mean, this is intentional killing of children, and it's happening everywhere. And so I think people need to come to the realization that anti-Semitism is a very different kind of hatred.
By the way, I do not like the word anti-Semitism, and I'll explain to you why, but keep...
Well, Semitic means Middle Eastern. It's not necessarily Jewish. I mean, the Semitic people include the Arabs.
But I do not like anti-Semitism for a different reason.
Okay, let's hear it.
Anti-Semitism, everybody knows it's against the Jews, but it can also be interpreted as another form of hate. I am saying we have to separate between hate. I can hate people for many reasons. But when I'm talking about Jews, it's very, very specific. So I prefer to use the word Jew hatred. Okay? That separates, because people have a tendency to lump together, like, for instance, the genocide and Holocaust. They are not the same thing.
Right.
In other words. And it's very important to be very precise, because all the tragedies in the world have started with words and bullying.
It's true. And it usually leads to violence, right?
Correct.
And violence and hatred in the wrong hands, in leadership hands, is very dangerous.
Correct.
And that's the way of the world. So I did say that it does repeat itself. We have to fight even harder now. We have to push back even harder, 10 times harder, 100 times.
Today.
Especially today, where hatred spreads through social media 1,000 times faster. Whereas it took 12 years for Hitler to convince his people to follow his ideology. 12 years. Today, it could take minutes for people to be convinced to hate a group of people. And so we're going to come back to another part.
First of all, I want to mention one thing with your permission.
Yes.
I am happy to know that there is today the 5th generation that talks about it. But the Holocaust must be taught forever and ever.
Yes.
Because it is the best example.
It is.
What hate cannot do only to a person, but to a group of people, to a nation, and to the world. During the Nazi regime, the entire world participated in the annihilation of only one group of people, the Jews.
That's what made it a Holocaust. Because a genocide is usually committed by a government of its own people. But this
against
is
a minority group.
And this is the entire world that somehow participated, even not being proactive is participation, as we all know, you know. And that's,
silence is death.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being here on this first part of our discussion. We'll be back with another episode with my guest, Sami Steigman, here on hmTV on my series, Ordinary Heroes. I'm Bernie Furshpan.